Good morning to you all, and a very, very warm welcome to Penn Vicarage on this beautiful Thursday morning. We're having a lot of lovely weather at the moment. It's really great, isn't it? A great day yesterday, and looking forward to another lovely day today. Friends, just to remind you, if I may, that Easter is not a million miles away, about 3 weeks away, in fact. And so do please get the services in your diary, both in Tamworth and in Penn. We've got some cracking services for you to really experience the passion and the resurrection of the death of Jesus and so on over the Easter weekend and so on. So do please find out what they are. I'll make sure they're on Facebook in the next couple of days. And do please come along. Do put them in your diary, and I'm sure it's going to be great. So more about this, but do please get them in your diaries, these services soon, so you can join us for worship then. Some of the services, of course, will be live streamed from St. Bart's as well. Friends, we are in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is now in his time in Jerusalem. As I said yesterday, he's living in Bethany and he's commuting every day, walking in and out the 2 miles into Bethlehem. And he's having some confrontations. People are asking him questions and that sort of stuff. So you hear lots of it today. So without further ado, Matthew chapter 22, verses 15 through to 33. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap Jesus in what he said. So they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere, and teach the way of God in accordance with truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax." And they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, "Whose head is this, and whose title?" They answered, "The emperor's." He said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. The same day the Sadducees came to him, saying there's no resurrection, and they asked him a question, saying, "Teacher, Moses said, if a man dies childless, his brother shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died childless, leaving the widow to his brother. The second did the same, so also the third down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman herself died. In the resurrection then, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For all of them had married her." Jesus answered them, "You are wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. But as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He's not the God of the dead, but of the living." When the crowd heard it, they were astounded at his teaching. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Right, you've got 2 incidents here where people come to Jesus and to ask him difficult questions. The first one, you've got some rather odd bedfellows. You've got the Pharisees and the Herodians. You've got to bear in mind that they kind of hated each other normally. The Pharisees would have considered the Herodians to have sold out and so on. So that's the first unusual bedfellows who come to approach Jesus. And the second one, you've got the Sadducees who don't believe the resurrection. And by the way, Pharisees and Sadducees sound very similar, but they're actually very different. The Pharisees believe in the resurrection, the Sadducees didn't. More on Sadducees actually in chapter 25. Come back to that in a bit. But I think the first thing I want us to see through this is the incredible wisdom of Jesus. In both cases, groups of people come to him to ask him tricky and hostile questions, is what they are. And in both cases, Jesus answers a question with another question. But in both cases, he answers the question brilliantly. And in both cases, he sees what they're getting at. He doesn't just see the actual question itself. He sees what's really going on. He can see the motivation. He sees into the heart as well. And he answers the questions on both cases so well that the people are astounded at his teaching. So I think the first thing we can see is the incredible wisdom of Jesus. That's the first thing, both with regards to the Pharisees and Herodians in the first one, and with the Sadducees in the second. In both cases, let's just witness the incredible wisdom of Jesus. Then there's the first question. The Pharisees and the Herodians come and they ask him a tricky question about taxes. And they basically say, the tax, should you pay taxes to Caesar or not? And they know perfectly well that whatever Jesus answers that question, he can't win. If he says you should pay the taxes, then the Pharisees will accuse him of selling out to the horrible Romans. If you say you shouldn't pay taxes, then the Herodians will report him to the Romans, and they'll take him off as a non-paying of taxes, treasonous, that type of stuff, and they'll go on, because they're a revolutionary, and they go and kill him. So Jesus, as they perfectly well know, they've got together, they've worked this question out very, very carefully, and they know that whatever Jesus says, he just cannot win. And yet Jesus answers the question so well. Everything, of course, belongs to God, quite right. On the other hand, for the proper running of society, taxes need to be paid as well. Jesus is not a revolutionary. Jesus knows, for society to happen, in order for bridges to be built and public services to take place, people have to pay taxes. It's got to be, even in regimes like the Romans and so on. It has to happen. But on the other hand, God comes first too. So what Jesus says here is a brilliant, an incredible answer, and does give us some idea going forward, actually, that as Christians we should pay our taxes. Absolutely right. God has to be our supreme authority, but taxation is important too. But then Jesus also says, give me a coin, he says, and whose inscription and whose title? It literally is whose image is on this coin, and what title is it given. And this is quite interesting, of course, because images were strictly forbidden in the Ten Commandments. And also, of course, the title, on the one hand, one side, Caesar was described as being son of God, and on the other hand, the other side, he was described as high priest. So there are three lovely ironies here that I'll tell you about the third one in a minute. But of course, Caesar is calling himself son of God and calling himself, on the other side of the coin, high priest. When actually, of course, we all know that Jesus is the real Son of God and he is the real high priest. The other slight irony, which comes into Jesus as well, is when the Pharisees and the Herodians are creeping to him, they're talking about, we know that you don't defer to anybody. They actually say, literally translated, you are true. And of course, Jesus in John's Gospel calls himself the way, the truth, and the life. So here we have the Pharisees and the Herodians getting together and inadvertently calling Jesus true. You are truth. And of course, look at this coin. Caesar claiming to be Son of God and High Priest, but actually we know that's who Jesus is. So there's lots of ironies in it. So Jesus answers brilliantly, shows us how we should respond to taxes, but also putting God first. But also, there's some ironies here that Jesus, of course, is the High Priest and the real Son of God. Then, of course, the Sadducees come with this rather stupid and silly question. It's the kind of question you have in sort of theological colleges or, discussion groups when you've got to get together and put together some ridiculous, unlikely scenarios about people dying on desert islands who've never seen the Bible and all sorts. And it's one of these kind of silly questions, because they don't like the resurrection, or life after death. So they say, this woman's been married 7 times to 7 brothers, and in the resurrection, whose wife is she? And it's silly, really. Because, of course, in the resurrection, the life is going to be so amazing in heaven. We won't need to be married in the way that we are now. So in doing this, they've underestimated just how fantastic heaven is. But Jesus also gets the opportunity to talk about the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, and it being the God of the living, not of the dead. And implying, of course, that Abraham, Isaac and Jacob are alive, because there is life after death. But I also want to pick up on this thing about God being the God of the living. Actually, I think it's important that we learn from the past, but we live in the present. It's easy to look back on bygone eras, things that God did in the past. But I believe very much that God is working today. And I believe that God is working his purpose out in this world and in our church and in our day and in our land and in our time. We shouldn't look back to bygone eras. God is the God of the living, and is a living God today. as much as he was 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago. God is alive today, and God is with us, and God is working his purpose out in the world today too. So lots in these two passages here. Firstly, just witness the amazing wisdom of Jesus, that he sees to the heart of the matter and answers so brilliantly so that people are astonished. Secondly, in the first story, Jesus answers about the proper way to do taxation. But there's also an irony here that he, of course, is the real Son of God and the real high priest. And in the other story, which the Sadducees bring, they've underestimated just how amazing heaven is. How does the Bible put it? Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. But also, we need to remember that God is the God of the living, and God's with the living today, and God is with you, and God's with me, working his purpose out today in our world, in our time too. More tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, by the way, to share these messages so other people can enjoy them too. Have a lovely day. God bless you, and more tomorrow.